The first time I saw her was at my husband's funeral. She stood near the front row, black hat pulled low, veil soft as smoke. When she took off her sunglasses, even the priest paused mid-prayer. Not because she was crying, but because she was. Her eyes were dry, cold. And yet, when my son turned to her and whispered something, she nodded, small and sure, as if she'd been part of this family her whole life. The church smelled of lilies and furniture polish. Cameras clicked quietly like nervous insects. I sat 3 pews back, beside people who pretended not to look at me. My name is Elaine Carter. I am 59 years old. For 38 of those years, I was Mrs. Henry Carter, wife of a respected businessman, mother of one, keeper of appearances. But that morning, as the choir hummed "Abide with Me," I realized something. Even in death, Henry managed to humiliate me. The service began with the usual rhythm: scripture, eulogy, polite coughs. I folded my hands in my lap, feeling the cold metal of my wedding band dig into my skin. Our son, Daniel, walked to the pulpit. He looked taller than I remembered, dressed in a navy suit that didn't fit quite right at the shoulders. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "My father was complicated." The congregation gave a polite chuckle. I forced a smile. Henry was complicated, charming one day, distant the next. But still, he was Daniel's father, my husband. Daniel continued, reading from a folded sheet. "He taught me to work hard, to never give up, and to love with all my heart." Then he looked up and turned his head not toward me but toward her. "Most of all," he said, voice softening, "he taught me what true family looks like, and for that I need to thank someone very special, Clara." My breath caught. The name hung in the air like smoke. Clara. The woman in the black hat stood slowly, a delicate smile curving her mouth. People turned. Some whispered, others gasped. But Daniel didn't seem to notice the ripple he'd caused. "She was there for my father when he needed it most," he continued. "She stood by him through every hard moment. She loved him without question, and I'll always be grateful." Applause, actual applause. I couldn't move, my hands felt heavy, my pulse beat in my throat. Clara sat down again, head bowed just slightly, the modest victory pose of a woman who knew she had already won. After the service, I stayed seated while the others filed out. The church emptied around me, the air grew still. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner, the rustle of paper programs being folded and tossed away. On the altar, the priest adjusted his stole and glanced my way. "Mrs. Carter," he asked softly, "would you like a moment before the procession?" I nodded, my voice wouldn't come. He patted my shoulder, the touch polite, rehearsed. Then he left me alone in the echoing quiet. The coffin sat only a few feet away, surrounded by flowers I hadn't chosen. Roses, white, his favorite, but not mine. He once told me red roses were too dramatic. I stared at the brass nameplate, Henry A. Carter, 1959-2023. Underneath, a small engraving, "Forever Loved." By whom, I wondered. Outside, the summer heat pressed against the stained glass like breath. Through the window, I saw Daniel talking with Clara near the hearse. She wore black gloves now, her hand resting lightly on his arm. People approached her, shaking her hand, nodding, whispering. Reporters from the local business journal took photos. One man said, "She looks just like the kind of woman Henry would have admired." I wanted to scream. Instead, I stood and smoothed my skirt. The smell of lilies was making me nauseous. By the time I reached the church steps, most of the mourners were already gone. The sun hit hard, thick and yellow. I blinked against it, the light almost blinding after the dim pews. Daniel spotted me, his expression shifted: guilt, surprise, discomfort. "Mom," he said quickly, "I was just about to come get you." "I'm sure," I said, my voice came out sharper than I intended. Clara turned. Up close, she was beautiful in that effortless, curated way. Hair sleek, skin pale, a small pearl earring catching the light. "Mrs. Carter," she said, holding out her gloved hand, "I'm so sorry for your loss." The words were perfect, her tone was flawless. But her eyes were calm, empty. I looked at her hand but didn't take it. "You must be Clara," I said. "I was Henry." She hesitated just long enough for the audience that had gathered. "Close friend." Friend, the word tasted like dust. Daniel jumped in, voice nervous. "Dad talked about her a lot, Mom. She helped him with the foundation projects." I smiled tightly. Of course, how charitable of her. Clara's smile widened just a fraction. He said you were a remarkable woman. I tilted my head, then he lied twice. A flicker in her eyes, surprise, maybe even respect. Then she nodded. Grief makes us all say things we do mean. Before I could reply, Daniel's phone buzzed. He turned away to answer it, muttering something about the lawyer waiting at the house. Clara's gaze lingered on me a moment longer, then she followed him to the car. The driver held the door for her. She slid in gracefully like a queen entering her carriage. The hearse pulled out first, followed by the limousine carrying them both. I stood on the church steps, sweat prickling the back of my neck, watching the taillights disappear down the road. People stared. Someone whispered my name. Someone else said, poor woman, she didn't even know. They were right. I didn't. The house was too quiet when I got back. Even the air conditioner seemed to hum in a different key. The curtains were drawn, though I didn't remember closing them. The scent of polished wood and fatting cologne still clung to the hallway. I sat on the edge of our bed, my bed now, and looked at the framed photo on the nightstand. Henry, smiling at a gala, his arm around my waist. My hair perfect, my smile dutiful. That photo had been printed in the business journal 3 years ago. The caption had called us Atlanta's power couple. Funny how power evaporates once you realize who was really pulling the strings. The knock came just after 6. Daniel's voice followed. Mom, you ready? The lawyer's here. I hesitated before answering, coming. I fixed my lipstick in the mirror. My hand shook slightly. The reflection that looked back wasn't grieving. She was angry. The lawyer, Mr. Hastings, sat in the living room surrounded by folders and envelopes. Clara was there too, of course she was. Daniel stood behind her, a loyal shadow. I took my seat opposite them, spine straight, chin high. The ceiling fan creaked overhead, blades slicing the warm air in slow circles. Mr. Hastings cleared his throat. Mrs. Carter, Ms. Lane, and Daniel, thank you for meeting so soon after the service. Henry was organized. He wanted this handled promptly. Of course he did, I murmured. Clara crossed her legs, smooth and silent. Daniel avoided my eyes. Mr. Hastings opened a folder. Mr. Carter's most recent will was signed 2 months ago. 2 months. My stomach clenched. He left specific instructions, the lawyer continued. All personal assets, including the house, vehicles, and investment accounts, are to go to Ms. Clara Lane. The words barely reached me at first. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, I laughed. A single, sharp sound that startled everyone in the room. Excuse me, I said, you mean some of his assets. Mr. Hastings glanced at me, then back at the paper. No, ma'am, all. Daniel stepped forward. Mom. I held up my hand. Don't. He closed his mouth. I looked at Clara. Congratulations, you've inherited my husband's ghost. She smiled faintly. It's not about money. No, I said, it's about winning. For the first time, her mask slipped. Just a second. Enough to show she knew I was right. Mr. Hastings shuffled papers awkwardly. There is, however, mention of a sealed envelope addressed to you, Mrs. Carter. He passed it across the table. Cream paper, blue wax seal, Henry's initials pressed deep. My fingers trembled as I broke it. Inside was a single line in his handwriting. Elaine, this is for the best. You'll understand one day. That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just arrogance, even from the grave. Clara's hand brushed Daniel's arm, a small, intimate motion. He didn't flinch. I looked at both of them, my son and the woman who had taken everything I built, and felt something shift inside me. It wasn't shock anymore, or even grief. It was clarity. I stood slowly, smoothed my skirt again, and looked at Mr. Hastings. Then you should know, I said calmly, there's another will. 3 faces turned toward me. Clara's expression cracked first. Another will. Yes, I said, signed 3 years ago and notarized. It names me as executor of the estate. Daniel blinked. That's impossible. Is it? I asked. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice. Mr. Hastings looked uneasy. Do you have a copy, Mrs. Carter? I do, I said, and my lawyer will deliver it tomorrow morning. Clara's voice dropped tight with control. You're bluffing. I met her eyes. Try me. The ceiling fan whirred overhead, scattering dust motes through the late light. For a moment, no one breathed. Then I turned and walked out of the room. My heels clicked against the hardwood like a metronome. Upstairs, I locked the bedroom door. My knees buckled, I sank to the floor beside the bed, breathing hard. The scent of Henry's cologne still lingered in the sheets, woodsy, sharp, faintly medicinal. I wanted to cry. Instead, I laughed again, quieter this time. Because for the first time in years, I finally had something he didn't expect. A secret of my own. And if he thought death would silence me, he'd underestimated the woman he'd left behind. I didn't sleep after the reading. I sat at my desk and lifted the lid on the black tin where I keep papers I don't want the house to breathe on. Inside, the older will lay folded like a quiet animal. Cream paper, blue signatures. The ink had bled a little where my hand pressed too hard. I touched the corner. It was smooth from being checked, rechecked, held at night like worry beads. That blue ink always takes me back. Flashback 1, 10 years earlier, the Foundation Gala. The Bellwether Hotel smelled like citrus and old carpets. Lights hung low like moons, soft jazz climbed the air in thin threads. Henry wore his silver cufflinks, he only wore them when there would be a camera. He looked handsome, and I knew how to stand at his side and look right. The Carter Community Foundation banners rippled by the reception doors. Education, access, dignity, words you could frame and never use. I watched our son Daniel knot a tie in a mirror. "How do I look?" he asked. "Like you're in a suit that belongs to the idea of you," I said, smiling. He snorted, "Mom." A waiter drifted by with tiny crab cakes. The smell of butter and lemon lifted and disappeared. I took one, it tasted like nothing and money. Henry appeared with a woman I'd never seen. Black sheath dress, clean lines, a silver chain at her throat, no wedding ring, no nerves. "Elaine," Henry said, bright. "This is Clara Elaine, she's helping with operations at the foundation." Helping? A vague word, the kind that lets anything slide under it. Clara held out her hand, her grip was cool and dry. "Honored," she said like she had practiced it. "Do you do nonprofit work?" I asked. "I do fixes," she said, "budgets, compliance, whatever keeps good things possible." Her voice was even. Her eyes were not, they were curious, like she'd opened a door and wanted to see if I would close it. A photographer waved, "Mr. Carter, a shot." Henry moved, I moved with him. Clara stayed near, angled perfectly to fall into the frame without effort. The flash popped, the room smelled briefly like hot metal. After, I reached for Henry's jacket sleeve to straighten it. He moved before my fingers got there. "Little thing." First hairline crack. At our table, donors laughed about golf. Daniel leaned close. "She's cool, Mom, she talks like a movie." "She talks like someone who knows who's listening," I said. Clara took the seat to Henry's left. I ended up across from her, too far to be part of the small talk, close enough to hear her laugh. It was soft and careful, the kind of laugh you can pack for travel. Midway through dessert, the foundation treasurer came over with a folder. He looked relieved when he saw Clara. "They're changing the invoice rules," he said. "Something about caps and proof of impact. I can't hold vendors past Tuesday." Clara slid her chair back and opened the folder. She read fast, her nail tapped the margin once, twice. Tiny metronome. "We'll need a stopgap," she said. "Bridge the payments from discretionary, then backfill after the quarter." She looked up at Henry. "We can use the donor-advised fund to keep optics clean." "Perfect," Henry said. He turned to the treasurer. "Get her anything she needs." Clara didn't have a pen. Henry handed her his favorite one, the fountain pen with his initials, HAC, engraved near the clip. Harbor blue ink, weighty, serious. She tested it on the bottom corner of the invoice. A dot of blue kissed her wrist. She didn't wipe it off. I watched the dot, it looked like a small bruise he'd made and she liked. The band shifted songs. The bass beat thumped through the carpet and up my legs. I smiled at a donor's joke and tasted metal. When Clara stood, the pen slid smoothly into her clutch. She didn't notice, or she did. Later, when I found Henry at the coat check, I held up the empty pen slot in his leather case. "Your favorite's missing." "Clara has it," he said. "She's using it for board signatures." "It's your pen." He shrugged. "It's our foundation." But it was. Not then, not really. On the way home, the car smelled like his cologne and cold air. Streetlights slid over his face in slices. "Oh, she's efficient," he said. "She's not staff," I said. "You just met her." He smiled toward the windshield. "So did you." Flashback to 3 years earlier, the study at dusk. The study always smelled like cedar and ink. The desk lamp cast a clean circle of light on green leather. Mr. Hastings, the same lawyer who would later read Clara's name like a hymn, sat with a stack of documents. He talked softly, soothing, simple updates, executor, specific bequests, residue. I nodded when I was supposed to. When he placed the will in front of Henry, I watched the date go down. Then I watched Henry's hand reach for the harbor blue pen. He'd gone it back or bought another identical, the same weight, the same scratch on the cap. Some objects come back to their owners, some are swapped in and you're expected not to notice. Initial here and here, Mr. Hastings said. Henry's initials curved in blue. HAC twice. Then his full name. Mrs. Carter, the lawyer asked gently, executor acceptance here. I took the pen, it was warm from his fingers. The ink flowed smooth as water. While it dried, Mr. Hastings glanced around the room. You've kept this place beautiful, he said. I forced a smile, I kept the place, Henry kept the world outside it. After he left, the house felt like a church after a service, quiet, solemn, haunted by the weight of words. I slipped a certified copy of that will into a clear sleeve. I walked to the kitchen. I lifted the canister labeled flour and reached behind it for the black tin. The tin was old cookie metal, edges dented from years of being hidden. Inside lay school photos, a lock of Daniel's baby hair, a yellow ribbon, one note from my mother. The will fit under them like a new floorboard. I wiped flour dust from my hands. The kitchen smelled like orange peel and bleach. From the hallway, low voices, Henry's, Daniel. I stood still and listened. Not tonight, Henry said, don't start. Daniel's voice was lighter, eager. Dad, if the foundation wants a real brand, you need someone who is, old school. Silence, then Henry laughed softly. You mean your mother? I didn't say that. You thought it. Foxed corners of magazines on the counter brushed my elbow. I moved closer, my feet silent on the runner. The AC hummed. My heart matched it. Henry again, lower. Clara's building something special. She understands reputation. She keeps problems quiet. She's intense, Daniel said, awe sneaking through. That's why she wins. Listen to me. Paper rustled. If something ever happens to me. Don't say that. If it does, she knows what to do. Follow her lead. What about Mom? A soft exhale. Your mother will be fine. With what? I thought, with Lily's, with polite sympathy. Henry's next words came slow, like he wanted them to print clean. Family is who holds the line when the money moves. The phrase stuck to the wall of my chest. Who holds the line when the money moves? The refrigerator clicked, a compressor groaned awake. The hallway light cast a strip across the tile by my toes. It looked like a thin door I could step through or not. I didn't step through. I stood there and memorized the sound of my son saying, okay. I should have marched in then. I should have said, I'm not furniture you slide around rooms. Instead, I went upstairs. I placed the harbor blue pen on the nightstand and watched its small shine for a long time. The house kept its own counsel. I learned to keep mine. 2 weeks later, I found the pen in the kitchen, its cap off, a thin tear of blue bleeding into a paper towel. Clara had been there that morning, dropping off foundation pamphlets. She left a faint perfume in the hall, something clean and fake like rain from a can. Everyone loved the new tagline, she'd said, bright. Access begins at home. Home where? I asked. She smiled, where the money reaches. After she left, I wiped the pen. My fingers came away blue. The stain didn't wash out right away. I went to the sink and watched the water run for a long time. The last flash of that season was small and sharp. Daniel came home late from a strategy dinner. He smelled like ginger and whiskey. How is Clara? I asked, casual. He opened the fridge. Fine, she says hi. I bet she does. He shut the door with his hip. Mom, this is bigger than you think. Then explain it. He leaned on the counter, confident and young. The foundation can do so much more if it's not stuck in old patterns. Which are what? Committees, consent, asking people who don't get it. People like me. He shrugged, you don't even like the events. I don't like pretending the check buys the truth. He laughed once. Dad says you're poetic when you're upset. I flinched small, quick. No, I said, I'm precise. He lifted his hands, don't be mad. Another phrase I learned to hate. Don't be mad meant someone had already decided for me. He kissed my cheek and went upstairs. I stood there with the blue stain drying on my hand, the kitchen smelling like ginger and something beginning to burn. Back in the now, at my desk, I refolded the will. I placed it on top of the black tin, not inside. I wanted it visible to me if not to anyone else. A breeze pushed through the window screen. Paper lifted, side settled. My phone buzzed. A message from an old name I hadn't seen in years. Lydia Cho. We had worked at the same PR firm before I left to be Mrs. Carter full-time. Elaine, I heard about Henry. I'm sorry, call me. I closed my eyes for a second, then dialed. Her voice came warm and sharp. You sound like coffee left on the warmer too long. Drew. I'll be direct, she said. I saw Clara last year. She pitched my client on a donor exchange. What's that? A way to move funds between foundations to hide origin until audits roll over. Legal sideways if you're clever. You have to trust the handler. Handler. Clara, she said your husband called it keeping the optics clean. The phrase rang, bridge payments, optics clean. From the gala, from that first night. Lydia, I said steady, why are you telling me this now? Because I saw Daniel with her, she said. He carried the envelope, she gave the pitch. He smiled like a soldier. I thought you should know who taught him. The room went tinny and far away for a second. Where? I asked. Rose and Finch, she said. The private room with the green door. The wall smells like bleach and gin. She likes it there. It feels hidden. Rose and Finch. Henry loved that bar. He took deals there. He told me the deviled eggs were honest. I wrote the name on a post-it. It stuck to my palm. The glue pulled at my skin when I moved. Thank you, I said. One more thing, she said. Bring gloves. For what? You'll want to touch what you find, she said, but you shouldn't leave prints. The line clicked off. I stared at the phone. I stared at my hand. The blue stain, scar faint now, lived in the crease near my thumb. The harbor blue pen lay beside the black tin. I tapped it once against the desk. The sound was small and exact. You learn to read your life by tiny sounds. The doorbell rang. I didn't move, I listened. Steps, a pause, another ring. The house didn't help. Finally, I stood and went down the hall. Through the glass, I saw Mr. Hastings again, alone this time. No folder, just a man who looked like he had swallowed a tack. Mrs. Carter, he said when I opened the door, I wanted to clarify something off the record. He smelled like old coffee and rain. The sky behind him was bruising for evening. 2 months ago, he said, Henry asked me to draft a codicil for a trust for Ms. Lane, not the will we read, something else. A trust, I repeated. He nodded. He was nervous about scrutiny. A scrutiny. An audit, he said softly. He told me if it goes bad, Clara will know how to hold the line. The phrasing was exact. I felt it click into the earlier conversation like teeth. Mr. Hastings, I said, do you know Rose and Finch? He blinked. Everyone knows Rose and Finch. Good, I said, then you know to meet me there tomorrow at 10. Bring nothing, say nothing, order a gin and pretend to hate it. Mrs. Carter. Elaine, I said, and wear a dark tie, you might spill something. He swallowed, yes, ma'am. I closed the door gently. I stood in the hallway and let the house hold me up. I returned to the study. I uncapped the harbor blue pen and wrote one sentence on a clean card. Who taught him to thank her instead of me? I slid the card under the black tin. The question hummed like a live wire in a wall. Because the last voice I heard in that earlier hallway, after your mother will be fine, was Henry's at all. It was Clara's whisper, close enough to the phone for the receiver to catch it. Don't worry, if anything happens, Daniel will stand with me. And Daniel had. But the next person who would stand with me wasn't a lawyer or a son. It was someone Henry never imagined I'd call. The next morning, I dressed like a woman no one would notice. Gray coat, plain scarf, no perfume. The kind of outfit that lets you vanish in public. Atlanta was damp, sky bruised with low clouds. The smell of rain mixed with old asphalt and coffee from the cafe next door. I parked a block away from Rose and Finch, that narrow bar tucked between a law firm and a boutique that sold linen dresses for too much money. Inside, it was half dark, half memory. Everything smelled of gin and citrus peel. The floorboards creaked softly, like the place was tired of secrets. Mr. Hastings sat in the corner booth, as instructed. Dark tie, nervous hands. He looked like a man who'd found out good manners don't protect you from guilt. Elaine, he said quietly when I approached, this is dangerous. Only if you've been lying to me, I said. He shook his head. I didn't lie, I just didn't tell you everything. That's what lying is, I said. The waitress came, I ordered black coffee. He ordered gin just as I'd told him. The glass trembled in his hand when he took a sip. The trust, I said, tell me everything you know. He exhaled slowly. Henry set it up 18 months ago, offshore, under Clara Lane's name, but the funds came from the Carter Foundation. Not from his personal accounts. No. The word landed like a stone in my stomach. So he stole from the foundation. Hastings looked pained. He called it borrowing against goodwill. And Daniel knew. His silence was answer enough. I leaned closer. You're going to give me access, every document, every transfer. If you don't, I'll tell the board you conspired. His jaw tightened. I could lose my license. I smiled faintly. You already lost your integrity. This is the cheaper of the two. He looked away. Then he reached into his briefcase and slid a small flash drive across the table. Password, I asked. Your wedding date. How poetic, I muttered. I left the bar without finishing my coffee. The air outside had turned cold and metallic, the kind that tastes like rain and betrayal. When I reached my car, my hands were shaking not from fear but from something else. Power, maybe. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't the one being blindsided. At home, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. Files unfolded like petals, spreadsheets, PDFs, contracts. Each one colder than the last. Payment authorizations, transfers labeled community reinvestment. Amounts large enough to buy silence or worse, loyalty. One file was named simply ROSCFINCH01. I clicked it open. A scanned receipt from the bar, Rose and Finch, dated 6 months ago. Dinner for 3. Henry Carter, Clara Lane, Daniel Carter. My son. He'd been part of this long before his father died. The doorbell rang. I froze. It was Daniel. He stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his hair, eyes tired. Mom, he said softly, can we talk? I stepped aside. You found time. He sighed, stepping in. Please don't start. You mean don't ask questions? Don't accuse. Fine, I said, sit. He did. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and rain. For a second, it almost felt normal, the two of us, mother and son. Then I asked, how long did you know about Clara? His head lifted sharply. What? Don't play stupid, Daniel. You were at Rose and Finch with them. He blinked, caught between shock and guilt. How do you know that? I tapped the laptop screen because I saw it. His mouth opened, then closed again. Finally, he said, Dad wanted to protect you. By stealing from his own company. He wasn't stealing, Daniel's voice cracked. He was moving money to keep the foundation afloat. Clara just helped manage it. It wasn't like. Like what? I asked. Like an affair, like betrayal, like letting her take my place at his funeral. He looked down, fingers digging into his knees. She was there for him, Mom, when he got sick, when he was scared. You. Don't finish that sentence, I warned. He swallowed. You weren't around. The words hit harder than I expected. Not around, I whispered. I was holding that house together while he was out building his new one. Daniel's eyes glistened. It's not that simple. It never is, I said, until someone dies and the truth starts leaking out of every locked drawer. He stood abruptly. You don't understand. No, I said quietly. I understand too well. He turned toward the door. If you walk out now, I said, don't come back until you're ready to tell the truth. He hesitated. Rain flickered against the windows, soft and relentless. I'll call you, he said finally. Don't, I replied. I'll call you when I stop shaking. He left. That night, I couldn't sit still. The flash drive burned in my thoughts. Every click, every folder felt like another betrayal Henry had engineered in advance. I scrolled until my eyes blurred. Then I saw it, a file labeled Property Register, Lane Holdings LLC. Inside, there were deeds. 3 properties, one in Savannah, one in Charleston, and one less than 2 miles from our home. All under Clara's shell company, all paid for by the foundation's accounts. He hadn't just given her money. He'd built her a kingdom. By morning, I'd made up my mind. If Henry could build lies on paper, so could I. I printed copies of everything, packed them into a plain brown folder. Then I drove to Lydia Cho's office, the PR firm downtown where she still ruled her domain like a queen who never aged. She looked up from her desk when I walked in. You look like hell, that's a compliment, it means you're ready. I set the folder down. You told me to bring gloves. She smirked and, I brought fire. She spread the documents across her desk, scanning quickly. Each line hardened her face. He used donation funds, she said. Do you know how illegal that is? I know, I said, and I know the board will want to bury it. She leaned back, eyes sharp. So what's the plan? Exposure, but quiet first. I want control before chaos. Smart. She flipped another page. You'll need a financial forensic analyst, someone who can trace hidden accounts. I know a guy, works clean, no leaks. I nodded, do it. Lydia looked at me for a long moment. You were always the calm one, she said, the one who fixed messes without making noise, but this, you sure you want to light it up? I met her gaze. I gave 40 years of silence. It's time they heard me. We spent hours building the first plan, a timeline, names, file references. By dusk, my head ached from focus. Lydia handed me a cup of mint tea. It smelled like safety and strength. Henry always thought he could outsmart everyone, she said softly. That's because he always had someone cleaning up behind him, I replied. Not anymore. Outside, the city lights bled into the windows, casting long reflections across her office wall. Who knows about this second will, she asked. No one but me, I said, not even Daniel. Good, keep it that way, let Clara feel secure, she'll make mistakes. I nodded, she already did, she let my son thank her in public. Lydia grinned faintly, public mistakes leave fingerprints. When I got home, the house felt colder. Not empty, just waiting. I poured a glass of wine, sat at my desk again, and opened my notebook. On a clean page, I wrote the words I hadn't been brave enough to say aloud. I'm going to take it all back, every dollar, every name, every lie. The clock ticked toward midnight. The house creaked. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed, distant, fatting. I glanced at Henry's photo on the shelf, the man everyone called generous, visionary, devoted. You taught me how to endure, I whispered. Now I'll teach you how to lose. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk, you don't understand what you're playing with. No name, but I didn't need one. I could smell her perfume through the words, that synthetic rain scent. Clara. I typed back slowly. Then come say it to my face. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Then, tomorrow, noon, Rose and Finch. I smiled. Of course. She picked the bar where this all started. I closed my notebook, turned off the lamp, and whispered into the dark. Let's see who really holds the line when the money moves. At 11:59 a.m., I was already at Rose and Finch. Same booth, same dim light bleeding through the blinds. Only this time, I didn't feel invisible. I ordered tea, black unsweetened, my hands didn't shake. The door opened, and there she was, Clara Lane. Black coat, red lipstick, the kind of confidence money tries to buy but never quite owns. She wasn't alone. Behind her was Daniel. My throat went dry. He looked nervous, glancing between us like a child caught between parents, except one of those parents wasn't me anymore. Hello, Elaine, Clara said, sliding into the seat across from me. You've been busy. Not as busy as you, I said. Daniel sat beside her. Mom, please, let's not do this here. Where else, darling? I smiled. Your father loved this place. Seems fitting we finish what he started. The waitress appeared, hesitant. Clara ordered a martini. Daniel asked for water. The silence between us stretched. You could hear the faint jazz humming from the speaker, the clink of glass behind the bar. Then Clara leaned forward, lowering her voice. You've been digging into things you shouldn't. And you've been stealing things you shouldn't, I said. Her eyes flicked to Daniel, a silent warning. He looked down. Mom. I cut him off. Does she call you Danny now, or does she use the same tone your father used when he wanted to sound generous? Clara's smile didn't move, but her eyes hardened. We can talk like adults, or we can embarrass each other in public. I'm fine with both, I said. She took a slow sip of her drink. You think you found something, you haven't. Those documents are irrelevant without context. Context like embezzlement, I said softly. Daniel flinched. Mom, please stop. No, I said, you'll listen, both of you. I pulled a small flash drive from my bag and placed it on the table. It gleamed faintly under the amber light. Clara's gaze followed it and, what's that? The rest of the Foundation's ledgers, I said, the ones you didn't manage to hide. She stiffened ever so slightly. You have no idea what you're doing. On the contrary, I said, I know exactly what I'm doing, and so will the authorities. Daniel's face went pale. You called the police. Not yet, I said. I wanted to give you both a chance to tell me why. For a moment, no one spoke. The bar noise faded to a low hum. Then Clara exhaled through her nose, slow, deliberate. You think this was about you? She asked. It usually is, I said. Her voice turned colder. Henry wasn't the man you think he was. Oh, I know exactly what kind of man he was. She shook her head. No, you don't. He was drowning. The Foundation was nearly bankrupt. Donors were pulling out. He needed clean money fast to keep his name intact. I helped him do that. With other people's money, I said. With vision, she said sharply, something you never had. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Clara, stop. No, she said. She needs to hear it. He didn't love you, Elaine. He pitied you. You were part of the image. The quiet wife who looked good in pictures but never asked questions. I felt my nails press into my palm, and you were the one who made him feel alive. I was the one who kept him relevant. She leaned closer, voice like silk wrapped around a blade. And in return, he made sure I'd never have to beg for respect again. I smiled. You might want to hold on to that feeling. It doesn't last. The waitress returned with the check. Clara reached for her purse, a sleek black clutch. As she opened it, a piece of folded paper slipped out and landed on the table. Daniel reached to grab it, but I was faster. I unfolded it. A printed wire transfer authorization, $500,000 from the Carter Foundation Development account to Lane Holdings LLC. Signed 2 days before Henry died. Careless, I said. Clara's face went white. Give that back. Why? So you can pretend it doesn't exist. She lunged across the table, too fast for elegance. Her hand caught my wrist, cold, hard. Don't test me, Elaine. People were looking now. Daniel grabbed her arm. Clara. She froze. Her composure cracked like a mirror struck dead center. For a brief second, I saw the woman beneath, frightened, cornered, desperate. I pulled my wrist free and stood. You made a mistake, I said softly. You thought I'd stay quiet like I always did. Then I looked at Daniel. And you thought silence was the same as peace. He swallowed hard. Mom, please. I placed the paper in my purse. You'll thank me one day, maybe not today, but one day. As I turned to leave, Clara's voice followed me, low and sharp. You don't scare me. I stopped. Good, fear isn't my weapon. What is? Proof. Outside, the air was heavy, thick with the smell of rain and oil. The clouds were dark now, pressing low over the city. I walked 2 blocks before my phone buzzed. A text from Lydia. Check your email now. I ducked into a doorway and opened the message. An attachment waited. Subject, you were right. Body, see attached. It was a scanned report, financial analysis from Lydia's contact. Every transaction Henry made through the Foundation was tied to Clara's company. And buried at the bottom, one line item. Executor transfer, Daniel Carter, $120,000. My chest tightened. My son wasn't just involved. He was paid. I drove home on autopilot, headlights slicing through sheets of rain. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my knuckles were white around the steering wheel. The house was dark and quiet. I dropped my purse on the table and sank into a chair. The paper, that transfer slip, fluttered out and landed on the floor. I picked it up and stared at Henry's signature. Blue ink. Perfect as always. But now I could see it, a small drag at the end of the line, the kind of tremor that happens when someone else tries to imitate. Not Henry's hand. Clara's. She forged it. Maybe she'd done more than that. The next morning, Lydia came over with coffee and 2 folders. Her hair was tied up, her tone brisk. You're not going to like this, she said, sitting at the table. She opened one folder. Inside were Henry's medical records, the last 6 months before his death. Your husband didn't die of a heart attack, she said quietly. He died from a drug interaction, his blood thinner and another medication mixed badly, but here's the problem. She pointed to a pharmacy log. The second prescription wasn't his. Then whose was it? I asked. Clara's. I felt the blood drain from my face. She gave him her pills, either by accident or not. The room seemed to tilt. Rain tapped against the windows, soft but relentless. Lydia met my eyes. You said you wanted the truth, Elaine. Well, it's ugly. That night, I couldn't stop replaying it. Henry's last week, the calls, the mood swings, the fatigue. The day he collapsed, Clara had been handling paperwork at the house. Daniel was there too. I pressed my hands to my temples. The scent of lilies from the funeral still clung to my memory. Now it smelled like poison. The next morning, I went to the police. I brought everything, the forged signature, the transfers, the pharmacy report. The officer who took my statement was polite, cautious. They opened an investigation quietly, promising to review all evidence. When I got back home, the house phone was ringing. I answered. Silence, then a whisper. You should have stayed out of it. Click. I set the receiver down gently, my pulse loud in my ears. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was clear again, bright, too bright. I stood by the window and whispered to my reflection. She's not finished, and neither am I. At noon, a police car rolled into the driveway. The officer stepped out, hat in hand. Mrs. Carter, he said, we'd like you to come with us. There's been a development. What kind of development? He hesitated. We found something at Ms. Lane's property. I followed him, my stomach a knot of dread and something colder, anticipation. The drive was short. Her house, their house, sat behind a wrought iron gate, perfect and empty. The officers led me through the foyer, past framed photos of her and Henry smiling for cameras. In the study on the mahogany desk lay a single object sealed in an evidence bag. Henry's fountain pen. The same harbor blue pen he'd used for every signature. The same one she'd taken that night at the gala. The ink inside was dry, but the fingerprints weren't. The pen sat there, sealed in clear plastic, glowing faintly under fluorescent light. That same deep blue ink I once admired now looked like bruised truth trapped in glass. The officer lifted the bag with gloved hands. We ran the prints twice, he said quietly. They came back confirmed Henry Carter, Clara Lane, and Daniel Carter. My mouth went dry. It felt like someone had tilted the floor. Are you sure? I managed. Yes, ma'am, one full thumbprint, two partials, fresh. Fresh. The word hit harder than I expected. He handed me a copy of the forensic report, black ink on white paper, cold and clinical. There it was, Daniel Carter, match 98.7%. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My son's name tied to the pen that had signed away my life. The room smelled of sanitizer and cedar polish. Outside, the late afternoon sun pushed through the blinds, stripping the desk in harsh light. Where exactly was it found? I asked. Inside a drawer in Ms. Lane's study, hidden under a box of blank stationery, looked staged but will confirm. Staged. The word echoed in my mind like a bell. I forced my voice steady, and Ms. Lane. Not home, neighbors said she left town last night. I almost smiled, of course she had. Clara knew when the storm was coming. She'd always been good at disappearing behind other people's mistakes. The officer watched me carefully. Do you want to add this to your statement? Yes, I said, every detail. By the time I got home, the sky had turned a deep violet. The house felt smaller, quieter. I sat at the kitchen table, the report spread before me. The faint smell of coffee mixed with the rain leaking through the open window. My eyes kept going back to Daniel's name. I tried to picture his hands, the ones I held when he learned to walk, the ones that built model airplanes on this same table. Now those hands were tied to the pen that signed away everything his father owned. I didn't know if I wanted to scream or weep. The phone rang. Lydia. Elaine, what happened? She asked. They found the pen, I said, Henry's, but Daniel's prints are on it. A pause, then a sigh, oh God. He was helping her, I said. I thought he was just blinded, but he was in it. You don't know that for sure, Lydia said softly. He might have touched it later. People handle things without knowing what they mean. He's my son, I said. He should have known better. There was a long silence, then Lydia spoke again. Are you ready to find out the rest? What do you mean? I got something from my contact at the bank. I felt my pulse quicken. What kind of something? The executor records, she said. Henry's accounts and Clara's, I'll bring them. She arrived an hour later, Rain still clinging to her coat. Her perfume smelled sharp, citrus, and steel. We spread the files across the table. The paper was damp from humidity, edges curling. Look here, she said, tapping one column. Transfers from the Carter Foundation into a private trust. Not Clara's name, this one, Daniel. I stared. Daniel had a trust. Not officially, it's labeled under an alias DLC Investments. Initials match his full name. My chest tightened, so he was funneling money for her. Maybe for himself too, but here's the twist. She slid another document forward. Every transfer after Henry's death came from Clara's accounts into his. She's paying him now. The words didn't sink in at first. She's paying him, I repeated. Looks like hush money or loyalty rent. I stood packing, the floor creaked under my feet. The house smelled of wet wood and old anger. He's protecting her, I said, even now. Then you need to make him stop. How? Show him the evidence, she said simply. Make him choose. The next morning, I called Daniel. He answered on the second ring, his voice wary. Mom, we need to talk, I said, face to face. He hesitated. About what? About the pen. Silence, then where? Home at noon. I hung up before he could argue. He arrived early. Rain slicked his hair, his face drawn tight. Mom, what is this about? I handed him the report. Read it. He skimmed the page, then froze. I can explain. Don't, I snapped. Just tell me the truth. Why were your prints on his pen? He rubbed his temples. I moved it, okay, after Dad died. Clara asked me to clear out some files. I didn't know what it was. Didn't know or didn't care. Mom plays. Daniel, that pen signed documents that destroyed your father's company, that took our house, our name, everything. He slammed his hand against the table. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The words hung in the air like thunder. What was? He stared at the floor. She said Dad wanted her to handle things, that the foundation was failing and he didn't want you involved. I thought I was helping. You thought betraying me was helping. He looked up, eyes red. I thought I was saving us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Only the sound of the rain against the window filled the room. Finally, I said, she paid you. He blinked. What? After his death, Clara sent you money through your Shell account. He went still. You, how did you? I know everything, Daniel, my voice cracked. Every deposit, every lie. He backed away. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. He looked like a cornered child again. She said it was temporary. She said it was Dad's wish. His wish, I laughed bitterly. His wish was to protect himself until the day he died. He pressed his palms against his face. I didn't mean to. I stepped forward. You're going to fix this. You're going to help me take her down. His head snapped up. No, Mom, if we go public, we'll all be ruined. She already ruined us. She'll ruin me too, he shouted. Maybe that's the price of learning, I said quietly. He looked at me for a long time, breathing hard. Then softly, you don't understand, Mom. It wasn't just money. What do you mean? He hesitated, then whispered. Dad told me before he died, if anything happened, Clara had the key. The key to what? The safe, his office, there's a letter. My pulse jumped. What letter? I don't know, he said. He made me promise to never open it, only she could. Where's the safe? He looked terrified. Mom, don't. Where? I said again. In the old foundation office, he said finally. Behind his desk, left wall, it's hidden. That night, I drove there alone. The building was dark, the parking lot empty. Rain drummed on the roof like fingers tapping for attention. Inside, the office smelled stale, coffee, dust, and expensive regret. I found the wall panel Daniel mentioned. A faint seam ran along the wood grain. When I pressed it, a small door slid open. The safe was old, heavy, combination dial worn smooth. On top of it lay a folded note in Henry's handwriting. Elaine, if you find this, then it's already too late. My hands trembled. I opened the safe. Inside was a single envelope marked confidential, do not release. The paper inside smelled faintly of tobacco and ink. I unfolded it slowly. It was a confession. Henry had known the foundation funds were misused, but not just by him. Clara had been siphoning money behind his back. When he confronted her, she threatened to expose both of them. He tried to cut her off, but she'd gone to Daniel, telling him his father was losing his mind. He wrote, "If she turns him against you, protect yourself. The trust is poisoned." I sank into the chair, the letter shaking in my hands. Every thread, every lie was connected. Clara had manipulated all of us, played every side until no one knew who to believe. And now she'd vanished. But she'd left fingerprints, and one of them bled blue. I folded the letter, slid it into my bag, and locked the office door behind me. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement like reflections of something cleaner trying to be born. I called Lydia as I drove. "I have it," I said. "The letter." "Yes, and a plan." She exhaled. "You're going to the police again." "No," I said, "I'm going to court." Because the only way to beat a ghost like Clara was to drag her into daylight. And when the truth comes out, it doesn't whisper. It roars. She was already sitting there when I walked in. Clara Lane's. Calm, composed, draped in a navy suit that screamed victory before a single word was spoken. The courtroom smelled like wood polish and nerves. Every cough echoed, every chair creaked like confession. Daniel sat on the other side, 2 rows behind her. His head bowed, his jaw clenched tight. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Lydia touched my arm. "You okay?" "I stopped being okay a long time ago," I said, "but I'm ready." The judge entered, a gray-haired woman with a voice like gravel. "This court is now in session," she said. "Case of Carter vs. Lane." My lawyer, Ms. Reed, rose first. Small, precise woman, her tone could cut glass. She outlined everything: the forged will, the missing funds, the trust, the confession letter. Each word landed like a hammer. Across the aisle, Clara's attorney, Mr. York, smiled too often, that kind of smile lawyers use when they're losing but pretending not to. "Your Honor," he began, "this is a simple misunderstanding. My client cared deeply for the late Mr. Carter. The transfers were approved under his authority. The accusations are built on grief, not facts." He paused for effect. "Mrs. Carter's husband trusted my client because his wife was emotionally unwell." I felt Lydia tense beside me. Reed stood before I could. "Objection, irrelevant and defamatory." "Sustained," the judge said. "Keep to the facts, Mr. York." But I saw it, the seed he'd planted. Unwell, that word hung in the air like old smoke. Reed called the first witness, Mr. Hastings, Henry's lawyer. He looked paler than usual, collar tight, guilt hanging off him like a second suit. "Mr. Hastings," Reed said, "did you witness Mr. Carter sign the second will?" He hesitated. "No." "Did you notarize it?" "No." "So how did Ms. Lane obtain it?" He swallowed. "She brought it to me. She said Henry signed it privately. I believed her." "Was that procedure?" "No, ma'am." Reed nodded. "Thank you, no further questions." York stood, adjusting his cufflinks. "Mr. Hastings, is it possible Mr. Carter signed privately to avoid conflict with his wife?" Hastings hesitated. He was afraid of confrontation. York smiled. "So you admit Mrs. Carter could be volatile?" "Objection," Reed said. "Sustained." But the damage was done again. Another whisper, another ghost of a lie. The next witness was Lydia's forensic analyst, a tall man with clean hands and a voice steady as a metronome. He presented the financial records, transfers, dates, signatures. "Each document traces directly to the Carter Foundation," he said. "Funds were rerouted through shell companies linked to Ms. Lane." Reed pointed to the projector screen. "Can you identify these?" "Property deeds, jewelry invoices, private travel expenses, all funded with misappropriated money." York stood, feigning calm. "And you're certain my client personally managed those transfers?" "Yes," the analyst said. "She signed 3, the rest were automated through her access credentials." "Or through Mr. Carter's credentials, correct?" The analyst nodded. "Possible, but the access pattern matches Ms. Lane's login times." York smiled faintly. "Or someone using her computer." He sat down, satisfied with his shadow of doubt. When it was my turn, the courtroom seemed to shrink. Every seat, every face, every whisper blurred. Reed's voice softened. "Mrs. Carter, can you tell the court what you discovered after your husband's death?" I nodded, hands trembling slightly. A different will, a woman wearing my grief like perfume, and a lifetime of lies. Murmurs rippled through the room. Did you confront Ms. Lane? Yes, she said I was invisible. And how did that make you feel? Relieved, I said, because invisible people see everything. York rose for cross-examination. Mrs. Carter, he began, smiling, you said you discovered the financial records yourself. Yes. Would you describe yourself as an accountant? No. So you could have misread them. I read betrayal just fine. Laughter broke somewhere in the gallery. The judge banged her gavel once. York didn't flinch. You've been under emotional stress, haven't you? Who hasn't, I said. Your son testified earlier that you've been erratic. Objection, Reed snapped. Withdrawn, York said smoothly. Tell me, Mrs. Carter, do you believe your husband loved you? The room went silent. I met his gaze. Yes, in his way, but love without respect is just decoration. York smirked, and you think he respected you? No, I said, but he feared the truth, and I'm here to give it to him. Clara stood when it was her turn. She didn't wait for permission. She glided to the witness box like it was a stage she'd designed. Her voice was velvet. Henry was a good man. We were partners in work and vision. I didn't take anything that wasn't meant for me. Reed stood. Ms. Lane, is this your signature? She held up the wire transfer slip from the bar. Clara didn't even blink. Yes. So you admit to transferring foundation funds to your company? I admit to following Henry's instructions. Reed flipped another page. And this, a property deed under your name? Yes, he wanted me secure. Reed nodded, and this one a check made to Daniel Carter. Clara smiled faintly, a gift from Henry to his son. Or a bribe, Reed said. Clara leaned forward, eyes gleaming. You wouldn't understand, Ms. Reed. Henry trusted me with his family. I was the one holding it together when she... Enough, the judge said sharply. Stay on topic. But the damage was reversed this time. Her words cracked under their own arrogance. Then Reed played the recording. A short clip recovered from Henry's office voicemail. Static, then his voice, weary, broken. Clara, if you keep moving money, it'll catch up to us. You'll destroy everything. Then silence. The courtroom air went cold. Clara's face drained of color. That doesn't prove anything, she said quickly. He was confused near the end. Reed turned to the judge, confused enough to confess or scared enough to leave a letter. She handed over Henry's handwritten note. The same one I'd found in the safe. The judge read it quietly. When she looked up, her eyes had changed. Mr. York, she said, I suggest you advise your client carefully. The recess bell rang. Outside, reporters waited like vultures, cameras flashing through the rain. Lydia shielded me with her coat. You're winning, she whispered. I'm not sure that word exists in this family anymore, I said. She squeezed my arm, then make it exist. During recess, Daniel approached me in the hallway. His eyes were red, his voice barely there. Mom, I didn't answer. I didn't know about the letter, he said. I swear I didn't. You helped her, I said. I thought I was helping him. She said Dad was drowning. And you didn't think to ask me. He shook his head. You were always so sure. I wanted to be strong like you, but she made me feel needed. I studied his face, my son, my reflection, my pain. Being needed isn't the same as being loved, I said softly. He swallowed hard. I'll testify, I'll tell them everything, even if it ruins me. I looked at him a long time, then maybe it'll save you instead. When court resumed, Daniel took the stand. He looked straight at Clara, then at me. His voice shook at first, then steadied. She told me to move the money, he said. She said my father wanted her to manage the foundation. I believed her. Did you know it was illegal? Reed asked. No, not at first, but when I found out, she said it was too late to stop, that if I spoke, my father's name would be destroyed. Reed nodded, and what did she promise you? He looked down, protection, money, a future. And what do you want now? He looked at me, the truth. The courtroom fell silent. Clara's expression cracked, a twitch at her jaw, a tremor at her lip. Then she snapped. You think you're better than him, she hissed. You all used him, his name, his money, his pity. I gave him what none of you could, purpose. Her voice echoed off the marble walls. The judge banged the gavel. Enough. Clara slumped back in her seat, shaking, mascara bleeding down her cheeks. York leaned in, whispering furiously, but she shoved him away. I did what I had to, she muttered. He was going to cut me out, I earned everything. Her words hung heavy in the still air, the closest thing to a confession anyone needed. The judge's ruling came fast. Her voice was calm, decisive. This court finds Ms. Lane guilty of fraud, forgery, and embezzlement of foundation funds. The second will is invalid. All assets revert to the original estate. Gasps rippled through the room. Clara sat frozen. Daniel covered his face with both hands. Lydia squeezed mine, whispering, "You did it." But I didn't feel like celebrating. Because winning meant realizing how much I'd lost to get here. As the bailiff led Clara away, she turned once, eyes meeting mine. "Enjoy the ashes," she said softly. Then she was gone. Outside, reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. I didn't answer. I just kept walking through the drizzle, each drop cooling my skin, each breath feeling a little less heavy. But inside, something had shifted. I wasn't the wife left behind anymore. I was the woman who stood up in the ruins. That night, Daniel came over. He stood on the porch, silent for a long time. "Mom," he said finally, voice hoarse, "I'm sorry." I nodded, "So am I, but sorry isn't enough this time." "I know, he stopped. "I'll spend the rest of my life earning back your trust." "Don't earn it," I said quietly, "live it." As he turned to go, I saw the faint blue ink stain still clinging to his thumb. A trace of everything that broke us. But maybe, just maybe, it could fade with time. 3 weeks later, the envelope came. No return address. Just my name, Elaine Carter, written in the kind of looping cursive only people who believe they're still in control use. I almost threw it away. Almost. But something, maybe old habit, maybe unfinished anger, made me open it. Inside, a single sheet of lined paper. Blue ink. Familiar. "Dear Elaine, I hope you can read this before they censor it. They don't like when women write too much truth in here. You think you won, you didn't, you just outlived the performance. Henry was never yours, he was never mine. He belonged to the illusion of being needed. We both built him, we both broke him. And Daniel, he'll forgive you one day, but not because you deserve it, because guilt is hereditary in this family. Yours truly, Zaya." No apology. No regret. Just poison written pretty. The paper smelled faintly of something chemical, like the ink itself was trying to hide a stench. I folded it once, twice, then placed it in the drawer with Henry's confession, two ghosts trapped together, ink to ink. And for the first time, I didn't cry. The world moved on slowly, the way the air does after a long storm. News about the trial faded after a week. The foundation's name changed. Lydia became interim director, rebuilding it brick by honest brick. Daniel kept his word, testifying again to help close every account, returning everything Clara had given him. He worked late nights, barely slept, paid off debts that weren't his. Sometimes I'd see him outside, sitting in his car long after sunset, staring at nothing. I didn't go out to comfort him. Some silences are the only punishment that teaches. But one morning, I opened the front door and found a small box on the porch. Inside, a new fountain pen. Blue ink. A note underneath, "This one's for new beginnings, D." I smiled, it was shaky but real. The house felt different now. Not haunted, just quiet in a cleaner way. The air didn't carry Henry's voice anymore. The mirrors didn't show me a shadow beside my reflection. I'd replaced the curtains, repainted the walls. Not because I needed to, but because I could. Freedom smells like paint drying and lemon soap. One morning, Lydia came by with coffee and a folder. She looked brighter, lighter. "Everything settled," she said. "Court signed off, you officially own everything again." I laughed softly. "I've learned owning things doesn't mean you have them." She nodded, understanding too well. "You still thinking about the letter?" "It's just words," I said, "and words only hurt when you still believe them." She smiled. "So what now?" I looked out the window. The magnolia tree in the yard was blooming early this year, big white blossoms opening like forgiveness. "I think," I said, "I'll live." The first thing I did was start walking again. Every morning at 7, I'd trace the same route Henry and I used to drive, past the bakery down to the park, through the little lane where the air smells like wet grass and exhaust. It felt like breathing again after years of holding it in. Sometimes Daniel joined me. We didn't talk much, just walked side by side the way we used to when he was small. One morning he said, "Do you hate her?" Clara. He nodded. I thought for a moment. No, hate's a heavy coat. I decided to stop wearing it. He smiled faintly. "I'm still trying." "That's all you can do," I said. "Try again tomorrow." Months passed. The headlines forgot us. The whispers stopped. Even the lawyers stopped calling. And then one evening, I got a letter from Lydia. Not a text, not an email, a real letter. "Elaine, we've decided to name the new Women's Scholarship Fund after you. The Elaine Carter Foundation for Women Rebuilding After Loss. I know you'll say no, but too late. We already printed the brochures. Love, L." I stared at the paper, smiling through tears. For the first time, my name stood for something I built, not something I inherited, endured, or survived. A year later, Daniel got married. A small ceremony, just friends, no photographers, no secrets. He asked me to sit in the front row. When he and his bride exchanged vows, I felt something loosen inside me, like forgiveness finding space to breathe. Afterward, he hugged me. "Thank you for coming," he whispered. "I wouldn't miss it," I said. "I like weddings with no lies." We laughed, it felt good. Real laughter always does. Sometimes I still think about Clara. Not with anger, with curiosity. In another life, maybe we could have been the same woman, desperate to be seen, terrified to be forgotten. But the difference is, I learned to live without needing applause. She never did. Last week, a package arrived from the state correctional facility. No letter this time, just a canvas. A painting, a garden in morning light, magnolia trays, white blossoms. At the bottom corner signed CL. I hung it in the hallway, not as forgiveness, as proof that even the worst of us crave beauty when the pretending ends. Now every morning I drink my coffee by the window, sunlight cutting through the glass like a promise. The air smells of paint and magnolia. Sometimes I hear birds, sometimes just silence. Both sound like peace. I'm 68 now. I live alone but not lonely. I've learned that solitude isn't emptiness, it's space. And space is where new things grow. On the anniversary of the trial, I took the blue ink letter from the drawer. I read it one last time, then fed it to the fireplace. The flames turned it to ash in seconds, the ink curling into smoke that rose and vanished. For a moment, I thought I saw her handwriting in the smoke, a ghost of her looping sea, then it was gone. I whispered, "Goodbye, Clara." Not with bitterness, with finality. Because forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you, the one still standing. Later that day, Daniel called. He and his wife had a baby girl. They named her Elaine Grace Carter. I closed my eyes and smiled. Some legacies aren't written in wills or ink. They're written in blood that finally learns how to heal. That night, I stood in my garden. The moon hung low, pale and kind. The magnolia blossoms glowed in the dark, their petals soft as breath. A warm breeze brushed my hair. And I realized this peace I'd been chasing all those years wasn't something I found. It was something I became. If betrayal taught me anything, it's this. Losing everything can be the start of becoming yourself. And sometimes freedom doesn't roar, it whispers. It whispers, "You made it through." What would you have done in my place? Would you have burned the letter? Would you have forgiven them? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Because some endings aren't revenge. They're release.